What up? What up? What up? What's up, my deal makers? All right. So we're just gonna get going here. Aloha from Oahu. My man Will Wall is in the building. He's traveling right now, so we're gonna have to bear with him. He had only a couple of flights available to him.
Howdy, sir.
Hey,
we
what's
here.
up, buddy?
We ready to rock and roll, bro. We got the headsets in so I can hear, and we are good.
All right. So, how was your 10-day trip over to Hawaii, buddy? It looked like
10 days on the islands. I think you guys can see here the tan is definitely elevated out here. I got a good couple days in at the beach, did some snorkeling, snorkel diving, soup boarding, surfboarding, boogie boarding, turtle watching, fish watching. Oh man, it was an absolutely incredible trip, and a lot of fun. Maui and Oahu, both islands, so really a lot of fun.
No, I mean, I've really enjoyed that. I mean, part of the trip, I wasn't even allowed to go to Mountain House in Maui because his group was so big in the Maui house that I didn't want to sleep on the couch in Mountain House. So I said, you know what, you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you in Oahu. But we've had an epic time here with our network. And I mean, it's Hawaii. What can I say? I'm happy to be here. It's been about 3 months since I've been here, working a lot in LA and Mexico. But I'm excited about today, man. We have my man Gabriel Hamel. This guy's an absolute stud. Been a big fan of his even before I met him. Fortunate enough to meet him in a mastermind. And then, this guy really prioritizes, that life, family, health. He's big on time freedom, financial freedom. He's a real go-giver. He's part of a lot of masterminds, and we're gonna go real deep into his story. We're gonna discuss, how he got started. He's been investing for a good, I think he started back in 2000 and it says here 2006, and then he's really mastered the art of seller finance, and he's just done a lot. And I think it's gonna be super helpful for the audience to see, take a deep dive into some of his deals and all the stuff that he's working on. So I'm excited to have him on, man. He's a good friend.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk about masterminds. We're going to talk about time blocking, lifestyle design with him, and those are obviously big things that you and I both do as well, right? Like both of us schedule out our weeks, both of us schedule out our time, and that's what kind of allows us to design our lives the way we want to. So I'm excited to talk with Gabriel as well. I've had a couple of chances to get to meet and hang out with him, and obviously, as you mentioned, super cool dude. So let's go ahead and get him on here in just a moment. But before we do, if you guys, as you do, start to trickle in, just go ahead and use the chat feature down there and let us know where it is that you're tuning in from, where it is that you are doing deals, and where we can find you on Instagram. So if you're doing deals out in California, let us know, hey, here's my Instagram, it's my name, that's where I'm doing business. That way we can all kind of connect and see if we have some alignment or something we can do to help you guys out. Alex, in the meantime, I know you had a good time out in Oahu and Maui, but let's do a quick business update as well, and then we'll get things rolling.
Yeah, for sure. So a couple things. I just spent about 30 days in LA. As some of you might not know, I'm transitioning to spending more time and living more full time in Los Angeles. Our business has grown, the portfolio has grown, and the majority of our deals are in Southern California. So it was a great stretch to be there for that long a time because I'm usually traveling a lot more. And we had some meetings, some people that I really wanted to meet in person. One big meeting we had last week with George Contreras. He's a coach on the Airbnb arbitrage, Airbnb kind of subleasing space. He's just high level dude. Came out to my brother's downtown location. We spent some time together, covered a lot of ground. So that was great to meet with him and see how we can add value. He's working on some small development stuff now. Well, they're bigger dollar amounts, but they're small developments because it's in a higher end neighborhood of Los Angeles. So made him some introductions, got to hang out with him. Also last week, we promoted the meetup that we were going to have here in Oahu for our project. So did a cool Instagram live there. I think, going to be doing some more of the Instagram lives, tend to do a lot of posting and reels and things like that. But I think people really enjoy those lives and we go deep dive into stuff. So that was cool. But also last week, I got 2 days into the Antelope Valley. We're investing a lot. We're having a lot of success. We're seeing that has been very consistent for us. So, I'm spending a lot of time out there when I am in LA. I went door knocking on some foreclosures, kind of getting those juices flowing. Met with some top people, some real estate people in the Antelope Valley, because every market is a little bit different, right? There's like core Los Angeles, there's, you know, the IE, which is San Bernardino, also Riverside counties. And then, you know, there's Antelope Valley, where we invest a lot in, which encompasses Palmdale, Lancaster, Rosamond, Mojave, California City, and the surrounding areas. And so you got to spend time in the territories that you're investing in to really know the opportunities and to, you know, see the real estate and to get out there. So I spent 2 days out there and saw, and just confirms that we need to double down out there because we have a great project management team. We could also buy and hold over there. There's less competition from what we've seen compared to core Los Angeles. So doubling down on that.
It's a good place to double down on, right? And we've talked about this before, that it's doubling down is the opposite of this shiny object syndrome, right? It's doing what you know is tried and tested. And we know that Antelope Valley for us is tried and tested, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you find something that works in your business, for that matter, your life, you got to double down on that. It's working already. So keep doubling down until it stops working. So we're doing that. Also got to spend some time networking with some of my brother and his partners, and some of the people he's working with. He's in the cannabis industry. So got to go to a Dodger game, and it was fun. I hadn't been there in a couple of years. And the good old LA Dodgers, and it's just a vibe. It's a total LA vibe. Also the week before that, I went to the game with you, of the Los Angeles Chargers, and that was cool. So did a little bit of that networking, and then I also spent a day in the other desert, Joshua Tree. So we have 4 active projects out there, and to be real, they haven't gone according to plan. It's been harder to get quality contractors out there. They've been slow. The projects have been really slow. We are seeing a change in the inventory out there. So we're pulling back from buying anything new out there. Also, there's been some pullback from the short-term rental permits that they're issuing in 29 Palms, which has kind of put a kink in a couple of our deals. And so just needed to go out there and put my eyes on those projects, as I haven't been there. But at the same token, I got to go to the park, the national park, the Joshua Tree, and see what the whole appeal is about. Spent some time there with our project manager, and really got to know all the projects intimately. And so that's part of the reason I spent a lot of time in LA, just to get to look at all the stuff we're working on and see what we're going to do with a couple of those projects that are not going according to plan. But we're moving forward. And I think we're likely to just break even or lose a little bit of money, or maybe make less than we expect on those projects. It's still to be seen, but I think we've learned a lot. That's what's important, and we're going to grow from it. Another thing is that I got here to Oahu on everything's been moving so fast, I'm almost forgetting like what day I got here. But yeah, I got here on Sunday, so I'll be here for a week. We have a project that property that we bought right on the water from a wholesaler that we connected with, a big investor that we connected with in Los Angeles we've been knowing him for, Gary for some time, and his partner Ara, and everybody over there in Cash Investors. And so what's really cool about this project is right on the water. It has been behind schedule because of other stuff that we prioritized, but this one's a long-term hold. And we co-hosted a meetup here. And if you follow me on Instagram, I mean, there was like 100 people that came out, and this is like the ghetto side of the island, or I guess you would say just not like Waikiki or the fancy part, but it's very affordable.
And it was a good hour and a half plus drive for a lot of those folks coming from Waikiki or the more populated areas. So that was a great turnout.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the vibe, that Aloha vibe of people kind of collaborating, people being there, and just being open and transparent. And I really loved it. So spent a good amount of time, met some people. And then also we've been doing other cool stuff here on Oahu. You and I went paddling out there, went canoe surfing. So if some of you've never done that, try it sometime. It's fun. We went out there. I also got out there with Indar, one of our good buddies, investors, one of the biggest real estate investors in Hawaii. He took me out there for almost a 10-mile paddle, out there in the canoe, just me and him. And man, it was pretty epic. So, but the thing is I'm talking about business. He's giving me updates. It's not like we talk every day. He's operating at a real high level and doing a lot of high-end flips, doing a lot of other stuff, like wholesaling in other parts of the country. But these conversations are so valuable to just these learning curves. Is maybe that one little thing that you learn from someone else that can help transform your business or help lead you to the right direction or help solve a problem. And so we talked a lot on that, that trip out there on the water, because we were out there for about 2 hours. So I felt like we got a lot of stuff talked about, like marketing, structure of deals, some of his goals on going bigger on some other projects. And then also, lastly, I guess we were pretty close on our refinance on our property in Maui. We pulled it off the market. We tested the market, tried to get a big payday on it. We didn't get the number we wanted, so we pulled it off, and we're at the tail end now of getting that refinance done and keeping that property on Maui. So just super focused right now on just back to basics, learning, good habits. There's a lot of negativity, a lot of noise out there, and so we're focusing on what's working. We're focusing on just making the right decisions right now. Because we see that the market has slowed down a lot, and we see that some of our properties are taking longer to sell. We see that buyers are asking for crazy stuff like big credits, and so we really got to work these deals. You got to dial in your rehabs right now. If you're flipping, you got to make sure that everything's it's really dialed in, and you're finishing your projects, and you just real sense of urgency right now, because these next quarter or two is going to be you're going to see a lot less investors. You're going to see less wholesalers, less agents. So that means there's opportunity for people that are out there still working and willing to work twice as hard, because essentially that's what you need to do right now, and that's what we're doing.
More opportunity for the people, like you said, that are out there actually doing it and doing it well. So I think that is, obviously a big portion of our business, right, is doing things the right way. And, I know the guest that we have on today, Mr. Gabriel Hamel, right along those lines as well, right? Like, this guy has been doing it since 2006, quite some time. So we're really excited to welcome on our special guest today. This is, again, Alex and I's good personal friend, somebody that we've met up and masterminded with several different times in different masterminds and different states. And so we're really excited, and welcome to the show here, Gabriel.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me. Good to see your faces.
Yo, what's up, man? I've seen you in that. Is that your office in Oregon?
Yeah, that's my little home office here. Yeah, we're back in Oregon after we were just on a road trip for a couple weeks, me and the family. So
nice, dude. Where'd you go?
Went up to Glacier and Yellowstone and the Tetons. So yeah, we jumped in that glacier water. We brought the paddleboard up there to hike that thing in, but I wasn't gonna go up to a glacier and not get in the water. So yeah, it was.
How cold is that? Like, when you're out there, like, obviously, pretty darn, like, what, 40s?
Hey, I don't know, but I'll jump in anything.
I love it.
Yeah.
They call that the polar bear plunge, right?
That's right. Yeah, we saw some grizzly bears also on the way up there. A lot of bears. So yeah.
Oh wow, that's
nice,
awesome.
Dude. Nice, dude. That Yellowstone is definitely on my hit list, man. Just nature up there, and so you have an RV?
We do, yeah. Last year we took off for 2 months and went all over, just made it up as we went. But that's, that was a blast. Me and my wife and the 2 boys. So
nice, dude. Nice. Well, we're definitely gonna talk about that. How you've been able to just create a life that you have this abundance amount of time. You focus. I know we've talked a lot about this. How important it is for you to say no, or just when things don't align for your goals, that you're just a lot better at saying no. And I think that's something that we as entrepreneurs can learn from you on that.
Yeah, and you can ask me whatever you want. You can ask me.
Definitely, brother. So let's jump right in. I know
we'll jump in, and in the meantime, guys, if you do have any questions, I know if anybody's tuning in on YouTube later, they always appreciate when we ask questions from the crowd. So if you guys do have any questions as we're kind of progressing through this conversation, please do use that Q&A feature, and that way we can ask these directly to Gabriel and get you guys some answers. But Alex, I know we wanted to kind of at least start on kind of the subject of financial, freedom, because obviously I think, as you mentioned a minute ago, right, like, you're out taking a 2 to 3 week vacation, and I know there's got to be some people on this call right now that would say, hey, I would love to take a 2 to 3 week vacation with my family. And I know I'd be lying if I said that was your only vacation of the year. And I think a lot of that happens to come with the financial freedom, which is, obviously been one of your biggest focuses since you started to invest, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It started with really that I, like a lot of us, like we want to be wealthy, right? Like I was like many of probably your guys' listeners and followers. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, a couple of years out of high school. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. So I had it like dead set in my head that I would be financially free and that real estate would be that tool to get me there. I mean, honestly, like the school environment, like I only stayed in school really for the social aspect and because I was a high school wrestler. I just didn't understand how does school really relate to real life. And for some people it does, and for a lot of people it doesn't. So when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, as most of you know, it's not a how-to book. It's really just a mindset around money and wealth and financial freedom. So reading that and being young, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be rich, I'm gonna be wealthy, I'm gonna, and I didn't really equate that necessarily to freedom at the time. I had also joined the Army National Guard in high school. So I got deployed shortly after reading that book. And I kind of had that in the back of my mind, like, I'm going to come back, I'm going to buy real estate. I had no idea how. I just knew that would be my path to financial freedom. And as I started buying properties and people asking me like, well, why do you want to be wealthy? I really had to reflect and ask myself that same question, like, why do I want to be wealthy? And really what I came to is it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about owning a bunch of cool shit. It wasn't about swimming in a pile of money. It was, I wanted to
I
own
was just going to say the Scrooge reference, and then there he goes swimming in the pile of money. I was literally going to say that. So
Exactly. So a lot of it was just self-reflection of like, why do I want to be wealthy? And what I realized is I didn't want to have a boss. I didn't want to have someone tell me what to do. I didn't want to have someone tell me where to show up. And ultimately, I wanted to own my time, whether that meant spending time with my kids, being able to travel, just being able to do cool things. But ultimately, financial freedom is what led me on this path of time freedom. And to me, that is a lot of times the ultimate goal. Now, I know a lot of successful people, a lot of very wealthy people, and I talk to them, and oftentimes that is their goal. Like they say they want financial freedom, especially early on that path, but you dig a little bit deeper and you really find out like the reason why. It's rarely about the money. It almost always comes back to, I want more time to spend with family, more time to travel, more time to give back to this organization or this cause, whatever it might be. But it's really not about the money. It's almost always about the freedom and having the opportunities to do something else with their life outside of just showing up and being in the grind all day, every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were able to attain that pretty young, even though you didn't have big expenses, right? I think that's also important. People think financial freedom, and they think I need to have $1 million in the bank, but not necessarily, right?
Yeah, and I mean it's a good point. Like, I was just at lunch today with a buddy. He makes $750,000 a year. Now it's a W-2 and half that's taxed, right? So that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah, I became financially free really young and really fast, but I was also poor as shit, right? Like I was replacing a minimum wage job. And so as I started acquiring properties, my only criteria was, hey, cash flow positive. And when I realized, hey, I'm actually in a fortunate position. I have a low paying job, and the faster I can replace that, I can be financially free. So yeah, I became financially free young, but I also, I had shitty cars. I had, I didn't even, like, the joke is I didn't even have a rain jacket. Like I remember spending $100 on a rain jacket was a big deal because my mind was so set on those early days on, this is an asset and this is a liability. Just old rich dad, poor dad, like I'm going to buy stuff that puts money in my pocket, which it only meant rental properties, right? That's where my time, energy, and focus was. But yeah, I was able to walk away from a low paying job because I was able to replace that income very fast with a couple rental properties. And then that gave me the time to go put my time and energy into finding more deals.
Exactly.
So I want to talk about that real quick because, right, you come back from Iraq.
Yep.
Here you are, you're a veteran. You're back here stateside, and you get back in 03, 04, and then obviously you're looking to purchase this property. Like, can you kind of dive into that? Because again, a lot of people, I think, kind of forget that a lot of the wealthier people had to sacrifice at the beginning, right? And you mentioned the crappy cars, you mentioned, a low paying job. So like, how were you able to put that low paying job and get that first house hack and get your investment career kind of kickstarted?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's so I come back. I was deployed in 03 and 04. I come back and I'm looking for properties. I have no idea what I'm doing. Like all I know is like, hey, I want to buy a house. I go to a lender, and back then it's during the subprime. Anybody could get a loan, and you always hear the horror stories of people overpaying for homes and getting something they couldn't afford. And yes, a lot of my friends were out financing a bunch of things they couldn't afford, not properties, but just cars they shouldn't have been driving yet.
Cars, boats, things they didn't, that weren't wealth, right?
Yep. And I went to a lender and they approved me for a loan. I had no job, I had no income, and back then they approved everyone for a loan. It was 100% financed loan, and it was an 80-20 loan. It was basically 80% of the loan was from one bank, 20% was the other. And I house hacked that. Back then, I didn't even know the term house hacking. It was just made financial sense. So I lived, I lived in one room and I rented out the other 2 rooms. And to me, it just made sense. I could live for less than I could anywhere else in town. So I did that in 05, I did that in 06, and I did that in 07. I'd also opened up a small nutrition store during that time that, long story short, didn't make money, shut that down. So 2008 rolls around and I have the 3 homes. 2 of them by then I've turned into rentals. I'm living in the one. My first son's born that year. The store's not making any money. And that was my real like kind of oh shit moment of like, okay, I got these couple houses that make literally a couple $100s a month in cash flow. What do I do? Like, what do I do? And I go back to the bank and say, hey, I want to buy another house. And now this is 2008, right? And the bank said, whoa, guidelines have changed. You actually need a down payment. You need a job. You need income. I didn't have any of those things. And they suggested the same thing a lot of people do. Hey, go to work, go get a job, maybe go to school, get a degree so you get a higher paying job. And in a few years, come back and we'll approve you to buy a house. And I'm just doing the math. I'm like, to come up with that kind of down payment, I need like 10 jobs, right? And so I literally took a bunch of odd and end jobs, help wanted ads on Craigslist. I mean, I just kind of did everything. And then I eventually ended up in a 30-hour a week minimum wage job in a high school special education class as like a teacher's aide. And really what it came down to, like the short of it is like 3 months into that job, I'm literally cleaning shit out of a stall that a kid threw everywhere. And believe me, my heart goes out to these kids. I'm sitting there reflecting on my dreams of financial freedom as I'm cleaning up this mess in a stall. And I'm like, what am I doing? Is this what I want to do forever or even for another year? And so I was like, I have to get serious about my desire to create some level of financial freedom. And so I spent the next year every night online, just looking at, seller financing, owner terms, because when the bank said no, the only other thing I remember reading about is like hard money or private money, which at the time I didn't feel comfortable asking for. I knew nobody in business. I knew nobody with money. My parents didn't have money. I had no friends with money. And so I thought, hey, seller financing will be my path. And so I just started searching those words and finding sellers. And it took me a year to find that first deal. But that first deal that I bought with seller financing in 2009, it replaced my income at that job almost to the dollar. It was 2 duplexes side by side. I did a no money down seller finance deal on those. I finished out that year of work and I never went back to work. And then from 2009 through 13, everything I bought from 09 through 13 was all no money down seller finance deals. And that's how I really built up my initial portfolio. It was all around building relationships and creating terms that worked for me and worked for the seller.
I love that because, right, like you could have just, fallen into the trap and said, hey, I'm going back to the job. I'm going to try and do this. I'm going to try and do 10 jobs, right? But honestly, how are you going to do 10 jobs and still have a family with a newborn son on the way, right? Like that's
Exactly.
made pretty difficult to do. And that would completely be the opposite of what you were trying to do, which is attain the freedom. I know, Alex, you used to house hack as well, right? That's how you kind of started off and were able to like save up some money to start flipping, was doing some Airbnb arbitrage. And sometimes you just have to kind of bite the bullet and sacrifice at the front end to kind of see those results on the back end, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think, like Gabriel, people tell you things, and although you want to, get advice from other people, sometimes it's their limiting belief or just they're following a certain program or, oh, you can't get a traditional mortgage. That doesn't mean I can't buy a house. That just means I can't get a traditional mortgage. So you have to think for yourself and then look around. I've been told no many times on certain things, and then I still kind of figured it out on my own. So, I think there's a lot of value to making sure that you're looking around and that, for example, the house hack that I did in Los Angeles, I did creative finance on that deal. I didn't have the 2 years either. I was making good money, but I didn't have the traditional mortgage back. I wasn't qualified for a traditional mortgage, but I found a seller that was willing to do creative finance and allow me to assume her mortgage. And I didn't even know how to do that. I had heard about it and I understood enough to be able to present it. And then I figured it out once I had somebody and the right opportunity. So I think sometimes that holds us back. We're trying to figure out all the details and we don't take action and we just write a strategy off without going out there and doing it and trying it. So, I did want to talk, with you, Gabriel, because there's you know, you have a big portfolio now. You've transitioned into, you know, commercial, and you're doing much bigger deals. And then you started kind of on the smaller multifamily. Kind of wanted to talk a little bit about how that's kind of transition has been going for you, because it seems like you're always going to another level, but yet you're still keeping the, you know, the financial, I mean, the time freedom, and then the balance. I think that's really difficult. Go big. And we've had conversations about this before, I think, and really valuable ones where you're like, well, you know, I took some time off and I reflected, and I, you know, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think too. I think you know, some of it is like once I got really clear on the things in my life that are most important to me, it was, and it wasn't early on. I didn't know, right? I didn't know really kind of what my niche would be or where my focus is going to be. And so I'm looking at every kind of property. You know, it's like, do I open a property management company? Do I become a broker? I mean, I was never a real estate agent. I did manage my own properties for the first couple of years, but I decided not to open up a property management company. But a lot of that was around like, what do I want my life to look like? And so once I got clear on really what I want my life to look like, then I'm able to make those decisions quickly of like, you know, owning a property management company, that might take me away from the ability to travel or spend time with my family or do these other things in my life that are important to me. And so the clearer I got in those few things that were real important to me, is really easy to make that decision. Hey, does taking this on align with those couple of things that are important to me, or does it actually take me farther away from those things that I actually want in my life? And I do see a lot of people building businesses, even in the real estate world, businesses that actually take them farther away from why they got into invest in real estate in the first place. And so I think it's important to just keep yourselves in check of, hey, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And if I take on this deal or this activity or this type of deal, is it going to get me closer to the lifestyle I want, or is it going to take me farther away from that lifestyle?
Yes, absolutely. Did you it seems like you're real conscious about that. How did that come about? Did you go to a mastermind, or was there certain influence that you had from mentors, or because like it's something that you do like on a regular basis? Can you like elaborate a little bit, like, because we're always faced with these decisions,
Sure.
Like almost on a day-to-day basis, or, you know, very often as entrepreneurs. How do you go about deciding whether something aligns with, you know, your vision?
Because I couldn't agree more, Gabriel. Like you said earlier, like so many investors go so far off the road from where, you know, they were originally starting. So yeah, like how do you stay so grounded?
Yeah, I think it kind of happened a little bit naturally, right? So like I started, you know, that 09 through 13, I started acquiring these properties pretty quick. It took me a year to get that first seller finance deal, but then it's like I have those 4 units, my original 3, all of a sudden I'm buying another duplex, I'm buying a 6-plex, I'm buying a 4-plex, and I'm self-managing at the time. And what I realized is I enjoyed putting deals together. In fact, every deal to this day has all been based on either a conversation I had or a relationship. I love people. I enjoy people. I enjoy building relationships. I enjoy having conversations, talking about real estate. I do not enjoy property management, and I'm not that handy. So I have young kids at the home. I'm there. Like for me, I was fixing a toilet at a tenant's house at 10 o'clock at night, not knowing what the hell I'm doing anyway. Then I had to call a plumber. So now it's my time and my money. And I was like, what if I just focused on the area that I'm good at? What if I, you know, and so the year, actually like the 2 months after I turned my properties over to property management, I did that at 17 units. I then had time, and that's when I put my first 10 unit deal. It was actually an 11 unit deal together. And I realized like, oh, I have my time. So if my time and energy isn't like, I never feel like I work, because the things that I do work on, they're the things I enjoy doing. And it kind of just is naturally part of my life. If I was managing property, I would hate it. If I was running a brokerage, I would hate it. Now, some people love that. That's fine. If that aligns with who they are and what they like, then great. And then kind of going forward, what allows me to continue to have that time, you know, is I have great property managers, right? So even though I don't own a property management company, I'm not dealing with tenants. I have, 400 residential tenants. I have some commercial tenants, but I'm not the one dealing with them. If I was dealing with tenants all day, or even dealing with a property manager directly that's dealing with them, I don't think I would like what I'm doing. And so it's just clear to me that, hey, like my relationship with my property manager are important, and high level stuff we can talk about, but I'm not in the day to day. I'm not working in the business to the point where I don't enjoy it.
Awesome. And so how do you find these qualified people to put around you? Do you have a method to, just align yourself with people that, that are complementary to your skill sets, and can you share any of that, because I think that's a big part of having the freedom is having qualified, amazing people around you that are doing the things that you don't want to do and that you're not great at. So can you share a little bit about your method for attracting rockstar team members?
I'm kind of laughing because I had this conversation at lunch. I met up with 3 buddies that I'm in a mastermind with, and they were asking the same thing. I said law of attraction, and they're like, I knew it, right? But there's truth to that, right? Like I've been buying mobile home parks, right? Like I have 8 mobile home parks, but I bought an RV park, and the RV park I bought last year, it runs way more like a business. Now I closed on this thing like 2 days before. I asked the current owner, hey, can you stay on? Because I had no one lined up to run this thing, nobody, right? But I knew it was a good deal. I knew the numbers were good. I knew long term it would be stupid for me to walk away from this deal. I have no W-2 employees up to this point, and I closed on the deal with nobody to run it. And I sure as hell wasn't going to go out to Eastern Oregon and run an RV park. And I was like, this will work out. I have the most ass kicker, my first W-2. I hired there, he's full time, but I bought that thing not knowing who's going to run this park. 60-year-old Army vet. For years he would go and run RV parks for another couple all over the country. But I threw a ad out online. He drove 400 miles to meet me. He drove 5 hours after meeting me to go to the park and check it out. And I knew from the second I shook his hand, I'm like, this is my guy. And he runs that park. Like, he loves it. He's doing his dream job. He's happy to be there. And he allows me to own that park that's extremely profitable. And I don't have to deal with running the park. I bought it from a couple who were burnt out because they were there on site every day running the RV park. I want to own the park. I don't want to run it. And the guy that's running it, he wants to run it and he loves what he's doing. He's making money. He lives where he wants to live, and I'm doing what I'm doing, what I want to do. So it's like it's a win-win. And then same with my property managers here locally. I mean, I don't know. I wish I had something easier to say, like, all right, everybody listening, go to this website, go find these people. Like, I've been very fortunate to find really great property managers, and I thank them very, very often.
Yeah, well, I think also a big part of it is that people resonate with who you are, and they want to work with you, and then they want to join your team, or they want to be part of what you're working on, and so it's not like it's forced in any way. I found that with my best relationships, that is very organic, and you're a very vocal guy. Like, hey, this is what I'm working at, this is what I'm great at, this is what I don't want to do. And when you're like that, and you're sharing and telling the world basically what you want and don't want, then, like you said, the law of attraction, you're going to get the people that are going to help you out and want to work with you, and you're not chasing or just trying to hire someone that doesn't want to do the job. And there's a lot of alignment there. So
and it's a win-win. Like, the woman that started managing the first mobile home park I ever bought, she was managing an apartment for me, and I was buying a mobile home park in that same town. It's about an hour south of where I live. And I said, hey, do you have any interest in managing a mobile home park? She hadn't managed one, but she kicked so much ass on that. And then I got another one that was near there. She brought me the third one. She's brought me 2 more of those parks, because of that relationship. So she's made great money managing the park. She made money on the brokerage side, and then she's putting a lot of people in her circle to work, running these things, a lot of these vendors and stuff. So to me, it's like everyone's coming out ahead in these scenarios, and they know it. Like, it really is a win-win.
Awesome. And well, we talk a lot about win-win, Gabriel, because I definitely have that mindset. We did kind of want to see if you had a deal or something that maybe a case study, something that you could give an example of, because I think seller finance is something that people that never done it don't really, they don't expect for someone to be able to do that for them. Yeah. So I'd love to maybe dive into, a deal if you have one that you want to talk about, and, the win-win aspect of it, and how you were able to kind of put it together, being that you're such a deal junkie like we are.
Yeah. We got a great question coming in from Alexandra, and she's asking the same thing. She's just wondering, like, did you take a course, or like, how did you get there, right? Like, how did you get to get people to believe you that seller finance is the way to go?
Yeah, we should talk about that first, and then we'll go into like a deal. So when I was originally putting those initial seller finance deals in 09, 10, 11, 12, 13, after I'd done a few of these deals, I thought that my strategy, I thought I'd find deals that I needed to go out and educate all these sellers on why they should carry finance. Because I was also learning the advantages, because there's advantages to a buyer, because you have the flexibility. When you go to a bank, they tell you, hey, you have to qualify for this, and these are the terms. Here's the interest rate, here's the down payment. It's, for the most part, until you get into big commercial deals, lending at a bank is very take it or leave it, and there's not a lot of flexibility. With seller financing, there's a ton of flexibility. And after I did a few of these deals, I initially thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I need to go educate all these sellers on why they should carry financing. And then I kind of thought, wait a minute, every seller who's already carried financing for me, I didn't educate them. They already wanted to carry financing. They already knew what seller financing was. They already knew what the advantage was. And not that you couldn't educate a seller on what seller financing is, but I thought, hey, if I could just get in front of enough sellers that already know what seller financing is, then I just asked the basic question of, hey, what kind of terms would you be interested in? Because if you know and there are no, like, people always, the two biggest questions I get is like, hey, what's your script? Like, how do you talk someone into carrying financing? I have never, ever, ever talked anyone into carrying financing. I've just literally got in front of enough sellers that want to carry financing, and there's no script. I just say, hey, what if I already know they want to carry financing? I just say, hey, what kind of terms would you be interested in? And I just shut up and I listen, because it's either price, it's down payment, it's interest rate, it's some combination of that. And just by saying, hey, what kind of terms would you be interested in? I hear what their needs are. And then it's a matter of, can I take what they just told me and put that together with what I need the property to do for me and create a scenario that gives them what they want and the deal still works for me. And so again, that's that win-win. And then the other question I get a lot is like, what are typical terms with seller financing? There are no typical terms, because it really comes down to, again, what are the seller's needs? Sometimes
does that seller need some cash for a new investment? They might want a bigger down payment, right? You mentioned time. Do they need maybe, a couple years until the balloon payment, or do they need a couple months? Do they want a higher interest rate, or do they want that higher down payment? So I agree, right? There's no real set term. It really just comes down to you being able to connect with that seller and actually find, hey, can we make a win-win out of this?
Yeah, and I mean, exactly. And a lot of people don't, like, they go in there only in the mindset of like, what do I need? And it does make it hard when there's a realtor involved. Like, I would say my best seller financing deals are off market when I can get face to face, because I like relationships, right? So I really focus on the relationship and not the transaction. So if I have an agent that puts something on paper, that presents it to their agent, then presents it to the seller's like, what the hell is this, right? Like, it's very transactional. They don't know who I am, why I'm writing an offer like this, and I don't know if it even aligns with what they want. But if I can get face to face with a seller and ask, and I find out what their needs really are, then I can actually present an offer that actually fits and gives them part of what they want. And a great example, there was actually a listed property years ago. It was a commercial property, a bunch of residential properties, and it was listed and advertised as a development project. And this guy kept getting these offers, and they were like strong cash offers. Listing expired, and I went and met with him and was like, hey, I saw this on the market. I heard that you were getting all these offers, all these cash offers. How come it didn't sell? And he's like, you know what? I don't want cash. He goes, I don't have any family. He goes, well, I'm getting old. I want income for the next 15 years. And when I pass away, this nonprofit organization that's near and dear to my heart, I want them to continue to get these payments. And so not only did no potential buyers know that, his own broker didn't even know that or ask him what his needs were. So they were advertising this as a development project, and he kept turning down all these cash offers. As soon as he told me what his needs were, he was flexible on price, he was flexible on interest rate, he was flexible on down payment. We set it up in a way to give him income for the next 15 years. And if he passed away, that organization that's near and dear to him would continue to get that payment. And that's all he wanted. And no one took the time to find out what the guy wanted.
That's a win-win. I love that, right? Like, you dug deeper and found out what his end goal was, not just, oh, I need some money right now. It was like, no, he really wanted to make sure that the money was in the right people's hands when it was all said and done, right? That was his true goal.
And that's, yeah. And I'll give you a good deep dive one. Like, this also goes to show, like, kind of a seller finance structure, but also going back to relationships. So there was a developer in town that started developing a lot of big residential stuff on the university, like on campus where I live. And he was building these big beautiful apartment buildings. And I was just getting started in real estate. And I just wanted to know who this guy was. And so, completely out of the blue, called the guy up and just said, hey man, I admire your work. I just want to know your story. And he's like, come into my office, very gracious enough to invite me into his office. I was trying to get nothing from him, wasn't trying to sell him anything, wasn't trying to buy anything from him. I just wanted to know what his story was. And he was buying these small multifamily properties in the 70s while he was going to law school. And then all these years later, there was a lot of incentives to develop, and he started developing these projects. And we'd stayed in touch. So I kind of was following what he was doing. He was following what I was doing. It's not like we became best friends or anything. And years later, almost a decade later, he called up and said, hey, my buddy's selling a single family home in the town over. And at this time, I just bought my first mobile home park and was making that shift. And he said, hey, are you interested in the single family house? And I said, I'm actually not looking at that point, I decided I wasn't going to look at anything, not even one single family house. I just won't look at it. Just focused on mobile home parks. I said, you know what? I'm really not looking to buy any single family. I'm really focused on mobile home parks. And he's like, that's interesting. I have 5 of them. And I said, would you, and this is 10 years later after me randomly walking into this guy's office, right? I said, hey, do you have any interest in selling them? And he's like, yeah, I actually, there is one I'm thinking about selling. And I said, would you sell or finance it? He said, absolutely. I go into his office, we talk maybe 45 minutes about the deal, probably, I don't know, less than 10 minutes of the actual deal. That ended up being a 2% down, 200% cash on cash deal. So why would he do 2% down? He doesn't need the money. This guy has thousands of multifamily units. He's a developer. The upside is that his time and energy isn't spent maximizing this mobile home park. He ended up with all these parks because of something from when he was in law. So it's not like that's his focus, right? And so I was able to buy a property with 2% down, 200% cash on cash return. That I paid $820 for it. It appraised out a year, just under 2 years later, for $2.3 million. Paid him off, pulled some cash out, tax-free cash. You know, and it's to me that's an ultimate win-win. He didn't need a large down payment because he already knew, like,
he already owned so much property, he didn't need the money, right?
He already had enough property. Didn't want more taxable income that year. And so it's a win-win. Has he sold me his other mobile home parks? Not yet, but will he? He says he'll let me know first, right? So it's like, that's relationships.
I think you're guaranteed first buyer. Like, he's gonna for sure come to you first because you developed the relationship, because you took that time and energy over those couple of years, right? Like, it was a 5-year process, but he knows that you're good for it, and he knows the terms that you're gonna give him are good for it, right?
And he's already told me that. He's, and like every couple months, I'll be like, hey, heard a rumor you're selling those parks. And he's like, no, Gabe, not yet, but trust me, you'll be the first one to know. Because I don't care if it's tomorrow, and I don't care if it's 10 years from now. But that's where I want to be in people's mind. Like, at least, hey, maybe Gabe wants to look at this. And I've had other scenarios where people have brought me deals that I passed on, but I at least got to look at them before the rest of the world got to see that they're for sale.
Yeah, and I don't want to overlook that, because we have a mutual friend, Mike Nuss, and his partner Tyler, right? Yeah. And I remember going up there, spending some time with them, because they also do a lot of seller finance and these type of deals. And he said something that I will never forget. He's like, Alex, you know how many people that I bought these 70 doors from? At the time they had 70, now they have more. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I guess like down to 20 is like 7 people. I bought these 70 doors from 7 people. And one of the best calls that I get is when I get a call from one of those sellers that financed one of those deals for me and says, hey, I need a referral for a painter for your duplex. It's not even my duplex yet, but in her mind, it's already my duplex.
Yep.
That is super powerful. And that's what you're talking about, that you don't need like hundreds of sellers or hundreds of deals. If you find the right, relationship, if you grow the right relationships with these people that own real estate, that have owned real estate for a really long time, like, they can sell you multiple assets. Have you bought multiple assets from any sellers?
Yep. Great question. Every single seller who's ever carried financing for me have multiple properties. Now, keep in mind, it's never been their primary residence. Every seller who's ever carried financing for me has been men and women in their 60s and 70s, and they're investors themselves. They got, and usually they're self-managing. Usually really, really good people who built up a certain level of wealth, and they're just tired. A lot of that generation had self-managed, and a lot of times they're just tired landlords. So it's been poorly managed, under rented, a lot of deferred maintenance. They've owned the asset for say 25, 30 years. So they don't have the interest to write off anymore. They don't have the depreciation to write off anymore. And so they're at a time in their investing cycle where they're ready to move on. And a lot of these sellers, because they already know about seller financing, the reason they don't want to cash out, they don't want to pay the capital gains. They don't want to they don't even want to do a 1031 because they don't want to actively invest.
That means they have more work to do, right? And they're on the back end. So oh, now I have to find a new asset to move into. Like, no, that doesn't sound good for a 60 or 70-year-old person who's trying to, relax, right?
And they surely don't want to go stick it in the stock market either. After they just spent 30 years building up this wealth through real estate, they don't want to cash out at 70 and go throw it in the market. And so it's a great scenario. So
Awesome.
One thing we always ask is, do you have anything else you're looking to sell? And so I think that works really well with a seller that already has property, that already has worked with you before and already had terms with you before, because that's, hey, yeah, I do have some other stuff, right? And maybe I'm not selling it yet because maybe it hasn't reached its maturity yet, or whatever that might be. But just being that first person on the list goes such a long way. Like Alex said, like, when we get those calls from agents and they're already presenting us deals and they're already expecting to do the transaction with us, that makes it that much easier because you already have that buy-in.
Yeah, just find out. Yeah, and just find out what they want. And yes, again, every seller has had multiple properties, every single one of them.
Awesome. Well, I just wanted to highlight that because I think, people, take this approach of like, they're just trying to market to like volume. And, there's certain value to that and certain business models in investing. But when you're talking about creative finance, you're talking about seller finance, taking the more of the approach of, let me meet sellers, like you said, I'm going to put myself in front of sellers that are more likely that already know about this strategy that, and then also you've identified almost like your avatar, right? Okay. Yeah. Usually they fit this category. Sometimes they're outside of that, but usually they have these things in common. So let me put myself in front of those people. But I did want to talk I did want to talk a bit about masterminds and your experience with them. I know you're part of several. I know that, helped you grow. We've had these conversations, Gabriel. So why do you still continue to go to masterminds? How have they impacted you? I think that's a conversation I want to have with you because I know you're part of several.
Yeah. I think for me, like I understood the idea of a mastermind originally from the book Think and Grow Rich, right? The idea of getting around people that are thinking high level and having those conversations. It's almost like I only know what I know, you only know what you know. We get together and we start, bouncing off each other, different ideas, different thoughts. And I think that it was something in my life that I knew I wanted. I didn't know what that looked like. I tried to do some local meetups and just wasn't quite kind of hitting on the points that I wanted. And so I joined GoBundance, which was a mastermind that's been very impactful in my life. And, for me, it wasn't just about like that particular mastermind. It wasn't just about the wealth. There's a net worth requirement to be in that group. But what attracted me to that group in particular, it was people that wanted to improve and kick ass in all areas of life, right? And in particular, that group, it's all men. And so like the first event I go to, here's a bunch of, multimillionaires. They're all kicking ass, but the ego wasn't there. Nobody was there to be like, hey, look how cool I am. Look how rich I am. This was like, hey, I'm really kicking ass in my business, but my health is struggling. Hey, I'm really kicking ass here, but my family's struggling, right? And so I realized like the people, I want to be around people that push me, that help me grow, that I can help grow, that I can help push. And so I'm careful with who I'm around, who I spend time with. Like the shit that goes in our head, positive or negative, like that's gonna stick with us. And so, the closest people in my life, the people that I choose to spend time with outside of my family are really through the mastermind, through GoBundance, through the Maui Mastermind, which I met you and a lot of the mutual friends that we have through the Maui Mastermind, and then different events. And I think what's important is like sometimes it's very, very practical advice, right? Like someone will say something to you like, hey, Alex, have you thought about implementing this? And you're like, oh my gosh, didn't think about it. I need to do that, right? Or you hear another conversation and you realize like, oh, I really need to eliminate this from my life or add it. Sometimes it's very practical. Do this or don't do that. And for me, a lot of times it's also just being around people playing bigger, right? Like when I'm in a room with someone worth 100 million, 250 million, the level of those conversations, the way they're thinking, the deals that they're putting together, sometimes it's just being in proximity of like, well, shit, why am I not doing that? What would it take for me to go there? And I very much believe like for anyone, if we're not at the level that we want to be at, it's from some form of self-limiting belief in some way. You've either convinced yourself that's not for you, you can't do that, you're unable to be at that level, they're smarter than me, they're better than me, they're more capable, whatever it might be. And so like for me, I just have to be around people. Like it fuels me to be around people that are playing life big, not just financially, but in all areas of their life.
Well, guys, we got some great questions coming in. One of them is coming from Alexandra, just following up on the realtor situation. Do you recommend not going to a realtor when you're presenting terms? And then Allison also following up with a question asking about, whether or not you pay asking or over asking. I think, guys, the main thing I want to circle back on that is that what Gabriel does better than anybody else is there's no definitive way, right? It's a case by case basis. So if you guys have ever heard of the game telephone, if I were to whisper something to Gabriel and he were to whisper it to Alex, by the time it got to the fifth or sixth person, it's just convoluted at that point. So Gabriel, I'm sure that's why you prefer being that person with the direct relationship to the seller, because you're eliminating that telephone and you're getting that chance to really present how you can help that seller and how you guys can both make a win-win, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there isn't just one way, right? Like I do think if I can get face to face with a seller, great, because I can build that relationship. As far as realtors go, sometimes I use them, sometimes I don't. Early on I didn't, because I was buying a lot of off-market stuff. But the reality is most real estate agents are not investors. I mean, they just aren't. Like statistically, it's a very small percentage of real estate agents that actually invest in real estate. Most real estate agents are just trying to earn a commission. I can't tell you how many realtors are like, oh my gosh, this is such a great investment. I'm like, no, that's a cute house with a great front porch. Like it's not going to make money, right? And so it's the same in the commercial space. Like just because they like it or want to sell it doesn't mean it's a good investment. And so I think like that's something to understand. And then to piggyback on that, as well as not only are most real estate agents not investors, most real estate agents know very little and sometimes nothing about seller financing. So I've had a lot of agents and brokers say that their client's not interested in selling financing, and they never even went and asked them. They never even asked them if they would consider it, because in their mind, they're trying to figure out like, well, what is that and how do I get paid, right? And so, and I'm not saying using a realtor or not. I mean, I use a realtor all the time for deals, especially on these larger deals. But I'm also finding too, like, as I've shifted into bigger deals, you're dealing with other investors, right? And so you're going to have more sellers that own property, and they're thinking of it more from an investor standpoint. So in some ways, it's almost easier to go bigger because you're actually buying properties from investors, not say a single family home where it's their primary residence and all the emotions attached to it.
Guys, I want to switch gears real quick because obviously, Gabe, we've met at a couple of masterminds, and I know you and Alex are, part of a couple of masterminds together as well. So, obviously, at one point you're sitting there a veteran, and you came back and you acquired 3 or 4 properties, but you were not going to be able to scale into multiple different avenues and different, commercial assets without some form of help. So, how have masterminds and mentors kind of propelled you to where you are today?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, kind of what I touched on earlier, is just allowing myself to be around people that are thinking and playing bigger, or have more.
You said that earlier, right? You said big players, right? Big ideas, big players, big concepts. That's a big part of it.
Yeah, I mean, specific to real estate, most of us aren't doing. And there's so many different ways to be successful in real estate, right? There's not just one right way. There's not only one way to be successful in real estate. But most of the strategies that I use or anyone else uses, people have been doing it in some form for a really, really long time. So it's not that I'm just making up something new or anyone else's for the most part. It's it's repeatable. And some of it's just kind of time in the saddle and then building those relationships, having those conversations with enough people for a long enough period of time, and then actually executing on the deal. I think taking action is a big part of that.
I love that, right? Because like you said, it's not like these sellers, we're coaching them on how to do seller financing. It's like, look, these guys have already been doing this. They already knew what terms were. It was just kind of about asking them, what are the terms that you guys would need to make this happen?
Yeah, exactly.
So Gabriel, I know, we're coming down here to the end of it. Do you have any kind of closing thoughts or any kind of opinions that if you were, getting started in real estate, what would be something that somebody in this room would want to start doing now if they're just kind of getting started?
Yeah, I mean, I know I've said it a lot, but I cannot stress the importance of building those relationships. I mean, because it's you have to go tell the world in some way, whether it's just, whether it's social media, whether it's in real life, you got to let people know what you're looking for. and specific to real estate, if you have an asset class and a location, I mean, I bought a lot in an area, a certain neighborhood in town in 09 to 13. It was the Whitaker. I bought a lot in that area, and I told everyone, hey, I'm buying small multifamily in Whitaker. So that became part of the conversation. Hey, small multifamily in Whitaker. So what did I end up buying a lot during that time? Small multifamily in the Whitaker. When I was shifting towards mobile home parks in 2019, that's what I was telling all the agents and brokers. They'd send me apartments. I'm like, hey, what I'm really looking for is value-add mobile home parks in this area. So it's like that just became part of the conversation. I don't think anyone's just going to assume that, oh, you want to buy a property and here's the kind of property and here's the location. Like, you got to tell people what you're doing. And if you're a new investor, don't be afraid to go tell the world what you're looking for. I mean, I knew nobody in my circle in real estate, no one with money. So I just can't stress it enough. Every single deal I've done has come from a conversation or relationship.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When we decided to do the multifamily, our first multifamily was in Phoenix. I went to those markets. I found, I discovered that's, what we want to do. And we started just basically waving that flag, telling everybody we want to buy a multifamily building in Arizona. And sure enough, we bought a multifamily building in Arizona. So it's so important that you tell people really what you're looking for. Otherwise, they're just gonna give you everything else.
Yeah,
and bring to the world what you want. It'll come to you, right?
Yeah, and I think telling everyone, just like I reached out to that developer, and then 10 years later, that that became opportunity to buy a mobile home park. I didn't borrow hard money for a very long time, but I walked into her office, local hard money lender, looking like a probably completely crazy person, saying, "Hey, we'll probably do business together one day." She's like, "Okay, sure, right?" But I established that relationship, and they've lent me millions and millions of dollars, right? One of the first seller finance deals I did, when I refinanced and paid her off, she became my first private money lender. We had 6 years of trust of me making that payment. I had never borrowed private money, and she said, "What am I going to do with this cash?" And I said, "You can lend it back to me." So she became my first private money lender. So again, that relationship didn't end just because I paid her off. And that it just goes back to that. It doesn't have to be transactional. Like it is a relationship business, like any business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know Will is on in an airplane, and my computer was kind of acted up, so I had to jump on my phone here. Do we have any questions that we did not answer? Because I know we want to respect your time, and we're coming up on an hour here, and it's been absolutely fire. It is also going to be posted on our YouTube, so we have a lot of people that can't watch during this time that end up going back later and watching it. And so, how do people reach you, Gabriel? Do you have any last thoughts or anything else that you want to share with the audience?
Man, I could talk.
We were just kind of sharing the last thoughts, but yeah, I'd love to get the if people can find you on Instagram, Gabriel, if you can type that in. So people can kind of find you. I know you put out a lot of inspirational videos, and I love your content. So if you want to go ahead and share that in here so that people can catch up and find you. It looks like Abby, our assistant, already did. Guys, that's Gabe's account right there. If you go to it, it's just Gabriel R. Hamel, and it's right there on the Instagram link. But make sure you give Gabe a follow because, again, this guy dropped some incredible gems today, and he is always active on social media. And again, I love the motivational content you put out on a regular basis.
I appreciate it, Will. I appreciate it. Yeah. Instagram is definitely the best way to reach out to me, just at Gabriel R. Hamel.
Awesome. Well, I think that we're wrapping up, you guys. Will's about to jump on a plane to LA. And we really appreciate your time, Gabriel. Thank you so much for sharing all these gems. I definitely have like a whole page of notes right here. I always learn something when I'm with you. Look forward to the next time that you and I hang out in person. But for the meantime, we'll see you around.
Awesome. Right? Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Gabriel.